Good morning. My name is Debbie Winther. I'm the lower school principal at the ACS Woodley campus. I'm very pleased to have the opportunity today to introduce you to a man who I greatly respect. I first met Professor Abdulaziz Zaid back in 1989 while I was at American University in Washington, D.C. I enrolled in a 6-week summer course called Peace and Conflict Resolution, which is a very popular course with the students. It turned out to be one of the most dynamic and thought-provoking courses that I've ever taken. Dr. Zaid was the director. Throughout the course, daily opportunities were provided to discuss conflict issues in various regions of the world at the time. We were able to hear the different perspectives by meeting with people from branches of government, the United Nations, foreign embassies, and a host of national and international organizations dedicated to peacemaking and education. We participated in role plays and simulations which helped us experience the issues at group and personal levels, and we also found ourselves swinging through trees on a ropes course designed to build team spirit and trust. And of course, there was the occasional dance which Dr. Zaid helped teach us. And he's also been associated with American University since the late 1950s. He's now the director of its Center for Global Peace. This offers one of the top-ranked peace programs in the world, and it's the only institution offering a master's degree in peace and conflict resolution. Dr. Zaid has also been a consultant to the United Nations, the White House Committee on the Islamic World, the U.S. Department of State, and he's been a member of the board of directors or advisors of more than a dozen organizations concerned with peace. Of particular note over the past decade, Dr. Zaid has been a major facilitator in Arab-Israeli dialogue. He set up nonviolence workshops in the late 1980s for Palestinian Liberation Organization officials, including Yasser Arafat. More recently, he organized a nonviolence training program for a group of Palestinian police officers and invited diplomats from Jordan, Israel, and the PLO to American University to talk about conflict resolution with students. Over his long career, Dr. Zaid has developed a spiritual, holistic, and humanistic approach to peace studies. He is also very good at teaching this approach to others. I feel very privileged to introduce him to you this morning, Dr. Abdulaziz Zaid.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you. Foremost acknowledgement is to the tree, because you know a tree by the fruit, and we are honored here to have with us the grandparents of Andrew, Albert Friedman, Tilly Friedman, Andrew's father and mother, Sidney and Ellen, and 2 of his siblings, Jonathan and Emily. For me, it is a source of great happiness to be with you. About 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, a group of us gathered in Rust, Austria, at the invitation of Carl Rogers, a distinguished psychologist, peacemaker from La Jolla, California. He had gathered about 30 peace and conflict resolution persons and invited representatives of Nicaragua and the United States. And our task was to work with the Nicaraguans and Americans, at that time focused on the conflict. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, nothing was happening. Those of you who know Carl Rogers, with his tremendous compassion, personality, trying his best, Americans and Nicaraguans were not moving. The 4th day, the Austrian government invited us to celebrate the new wine We participated, and midway in the evening, the representative of Nicaragua puts his hand in his pocket, produces a photograph, and looks at Larry Chickering, Lawrence Chickering, the chief American representative. He says, "Senor Chickering, you are not going to kill my son." Larry Chickering happened to have a photograph of his son. He produced a photograph of his son, and he said, "Let's make a deal. This coming Christmas, let our sons visit families. I will send you my son, you send me your son." That's how it began. It began when the conflict between the United States and Nicaragua became real. It became my sons, your sons. At this time, we are between stories. We are between stories. We are between stories. We are between an old story that told us that global politics, world politics, is a struggle of nation states for power, to promote their interests, to preserve their security. That has been the old story. We have been told that the best we can do is to preserve civilization. The point here is that in the old story, the focus was on nation states, the focus was on national interests, the focus was on national security. In the old story, we tried to maintain peace. How? What was the slogan? If you want peace, prepare for war. That's the old story. If you want peace, prepare for war. What is occurring? The concept of peace is changing. I'm saying we are between stories. We know increasingly that the old story is unacceptable, because we are discovering that the whole world needs the whole world. We didn't know that before. In the old story, East met West, North met South as rivals, exploiting one another. In the new story, we meet not as rivals, we meet East and West, North and South, North giving South the best it has, East giving West the best it has, in exchange of getting from the East the best that East has, in exchange of getting from the South the best that South has. Not meeting as rivals. That's the story we are trying to work with. When we think about peace, we think about approaches to peace. In the old story, we said, if you want peace, prepare for war. In the new story, we are saying, if you want peace, prepare for peace. If you want peace, teach peace. If you want peace, live peace. Because peace is not merely a goal to be realized, that peace is a dynamic process. And our recipient, Andrew, is an illustration of that. Andrew Friedman, a young man whose talents exceed his challenges. A young man who inspires much more than what he requires. In the new story, we know that every single individual is a chosen human being. In the new story, we know that peace is a process. It is a dual process. It includes task And by task, I mean it includes you and I, all of us, recognizing that peace is not merely the absence of war, but peace is the presence of justice and freedom for all. And as such, it is both task and our task together, you and I, all of us, is to certainly deal with the issues of hunger, poverty, degradation of environment, oppression, injustice, but it's also experience for us to be, as our example here is, a source and a mirror of peace. We are here gathered in the light that emanates from our young man here. Peace is a state of consciousness. Peace requires examples. It requires gentle eyes, humility. Yes, we are between stories. And we have to create a new story. The old story doesn't do it. The old story of rivals doesn't do it. I remember about 3 years ago, participating in a conference in Israel. I sat next to a taxi driver going from West Jerusalem to East Jerusalem. Sat next to the taxi driver. As he proceeded, I told him where I was going in East Jerusalem. He said, "I cannot take you there. That's a dangerous area. I'll tell you what I will do. I will take you to a point and I'll drop you there. After that, you are on your own." Then he looked at me. He said, "Where are you from?" I said, "Syria." Despite my Scandinavian external appearance, I was born in Syria. He looked at me and he was shaken. He said, "Syria, what are you doing here?" We started talking, and he kept driving. And we talked, and he drove. About 15 minutes later, the young man goes on his radio, and in Hebrew, he conducted a discourse in Hebrew for about 2-3 minutes, 5 minutes. He put his radio back. He said, "Professor," he said, "I spoke on radio with our people to contact the other side, taxi in East Jerusalem. What we will do, I will stay with you. I will stay with you till they come. I don't want to leave you alone because I don't want peace to be hurt. I want to stay with you." So we stayed together. And the other taxi came and I left. From Tel Aviv, I flew to Cyprus, then to Damascus, Syria. At the airport, took a taxi. The driver kept going. He said, "Where did you come from?" I said, "Tel Aviv." He said, "My God, that's the enemy." We started talking and talking. And by the time we came to the hotel, he said, "You know, we have had it. We have had it. We need peace." Yes, they need peace. When we talk about the new story, we are talking about, if we can visualize a table that has 4 legs, because we all exist in 4 spaces, in 4 environments. Every one of us here exists in nature. In the new story then, for there to be peace, looking at the first space in which we exist, nature, what is the key value in nature? Ecological balance. In the new story then, for there to be peace, there has to be an ecological balance. There cannot be peace without an ecological balance. There cannot be peace if our environment is not clean. But we all exist also in a human environment, you and me, all of us. And in the new story, there cannot be peace unless in the human environment there is respect for human dignity. There is respect for basic human needs. And all of us also exist in another space, a third space, the third leg of the table, our political environment, the way we organize ourselves. And there cannot be peace unless there is political pluralism, unless there is coexistence, going back to seeds of peace. Unless there is political pluralism, there cannot be peace. And we all exist also in a fourth space, in a cultural environment. The way we live our lives. And there cannot be peace in the new story unless there is cultural diversity, there's respect for diversity of cultures. In the new story then, our table is founded upon four legs: ecological balance in nature, human dignity in the human environment, coexistence in the political environment, and diversity in the cultural environment. To recognize culture as a resource. Yes. In the new story then, going back to the Middle East, and remembering Plato, it is true that Arabs and Israelis have differences. That's true. It's true that there is a conflict. That also is true. But, my beloved friends, the old order of violent conflict between Arabs and Israelis has collapsed. Thank God. The old order has collapsed. The old order of violence has collapsed. But our task, those of us here and others, while the old order of the Arab-Israeli conflict, of Jews and Arabs not acknowledging one another, that order has collapsed. Because they have discovered, both of them, that they are both there to stay. That the dignity and security of the Israeli depends on the maintenance of the dignity and security of the Palestinian, and vice versa. But while the old order of the Arab-Israeli conflict has collapsed, it collapsed more rapidly than a new vision to replace it. That's what we have to do. We have not only to search for a common ground, which we are doing, but we have to construct a common vision of Israelis and Arabs living with one another, living together. And one step in that direction is to recognize, as Plato recognized before we did, that while we are different, through open dialogue, through open discourse, we will discover that the deeper we go, the more similar we will discover the human predicament to be. Yes, let me conclude. We are in a great school, and the purpose of a great school, among other things, is to expand, to stretch the moral imagination, to stretch and expand the moral imagination to include the widest possible humanity. That's what education is about. To stretch our moral imagination to include others. To stretch our moral imagination to discover that what we do for others is the insurance for our survival. Yes, as I look at the beautiful faces, yes, there is a lock, but the good news, there's a key. There's a key. Yes, there's a lock. Yes, there is a lock. And the lock is fear, and the key is love. Yeah, the key is love. I'm reminded in conclusion of a story about a person who went to a quarry, and entering the quarry, our friend passed one person after another, all of them working with stones. And he came and kept inquiring, "What are you doing?" And the first person said, "I'm making a living." Our friend kept going and saw another person doing the identical thing and inquired, "And what are you doing?" And the person said, "I'm dressing stones." And came to another person and inquired, "What are you doing?" And the person said, "I'm building cathedrals." They were all doing identical things. But the way they saw what they were doing was different. Yes, we experience peace through action as well as through being. Yes, yes, that's how we experience peace. And for you who are in school here, and for those of us who are in school other places, whether we are in our work, our homes, what we discover is that any achievement that we make, I'm not aware that anyone can achieve anything alone. It has to be done together. And finally, for the students here, let me leave with you 4 thoughts, because I would know by now you say, "What can I do about peace? What can I do?" First, what I can do is to convince myself intellectually that peace is possible. To convince ourselves that's possible. And second, to affirm that possibility over and over and over again. And third, to spread the word that it can really happen. And fourth, to do something that nudges the world in the direction of peace. What I'm learning, when I am a source of peace, I become a mirror of peace. When peace emanates from me, peace returns to me. That's what it's about. I want to also announce that it would be great to establish a peace scholarship to be awarded to the outstanding student or students from the American community schools to study at American University and pursue their higher education in peace and conflict resolution. And I would like to urge you to consider that as something worth considering. Please do. But let me, in closing, go back to Andrew. Go back to Andrew, And Andrew, this is to you from me. This is a book of mine I would like for you to keep. And also, having read your material, to you from me is a very small article in the Washington Post that was published on April 6, 1977. This was before Camp David. This was when Rabin was prime minister the first time. At that time, it was my honor as president of the faculty of the American University to participate in awarding Rabin an honorary doctorate. And as president of the university faculty, it was my honor to make the presentation. To my surprise, the Washington Post carried the presentation the second day in what they call for the record. I have to say to you, when I was asked to make the presentation, I did not know what to say to Mr. Rabin. This was before Camp David. And I would like to keep this with you, and I will only read the opening sentence that was quoted in the Post. As fellow Semites, you and I, typical of Israelis and Arabs, have more in common than we acknowledge. Foremost among our commonalities is the desire for peace in the Middle East. And in the conclusion, let it not be said about us that the people of the land of let me repeat. Let it not be said about us that the people of the land where man has killed his first brother has learned so little since the beginning of time. This is for you to keep. And the third thing for you to keep, when Prime Minister Rabin was assassinated, I was asked by the American Jewish Committee to make a statement, and I have the statement here for you. Thank you.